Welcome to the Chapter 4 lecture. In Chapter 4, we'll talk about rules of language and how language is used in everyday situations. Let's preview the lecture. First of all, reading Chapter 4. Make sure that you are doing the reading. It'll help you understand the concepts a little bit more. A lot of what I talk about is, again, kind of the summary, analysis, a little bit of hot take on the lecture material. Want you to focus on understanding it through the reading. We'll talk about some characteristics of language, the power of language to influence how we talk, and then finally some confusing uses of language, which contains some very funny examples. And if you hang out until the end, there's a dog video. So make sure that you make it through the end of the lecture and say hi to Mr. Wiffles. I don't think we spend a lot of time thinking about how language actually works. We've been encountering language since the day we were born, even before we were born, and we just kind of go with it. Okay, here's some language. We use this every day. It's breathing to us. But let's think about a few characteristics of language that help us create meaning through language. And the first is that language is symbolic. When we use a word, it's symbolic of something else. For example, I'm going to choose this right here. This is a candle. It is a pumpkin spice candle from the Madeline Island Candle Company, which is an island in, yep, you guessed it, Lake Superior. Comes full circle. So we know that this is a candle. We say the word candle. You know what it means. But now let's talk about how meanings are in people, not words. So we have a denotative and connotative definition of the words that we use. The denotative definition is the dictionary definition. This is a candle. It's made of wax. You light it. It stays on fire. It smells nice. We all know what a candle is. But then our connotative meaning is thoughts and feelings associated with the candle. So some of you might be really excited about, woo, it's candle season. And I mean, again, this is a pumpkin spice candle. There you go, pumpkin spice, have a whiff. So you might have a connotative meaning of fall and cozy and happy and home, and you are all about this nice candle that I have right here. I wish I could just, have you smell this through the computer. So that's our connotative meaning, but some of you might have a different connotative meaning. Some of you might have sense sensitivities or allergies, and the idea of me lighting this in a room where you're at, you are not about this. Others of you might have negative experiences with candles. Maybe you were burned by a candle when you were younger, or, even last week, no judgment. Or let's say you or somebody you know experienced a house fire because of candles. And I'm like, hey, look at my candle. Isn't it cute? My denotative meaning, my connotative meaning, it might be cute. And yours is, girl, don't light that thing on fire in your house. Everybody's got different connotative meanings for words. We'll talk about that more in the next slide. Language is also governed by rules. So there's different rules for the ways that we use language. And I'll cover these more in further slides, but there are phonological rules, rules for how we say words, syntactic rules. These are rules for the order of words, semantic rules, rules for what words mean, and pragmatic rules, or how we use language in everyday situations. Don't worry about remembering all of those definitions right now. We'll come back to those. All right, so let's talk more about this denotative versus connotative issue. I have a lot of symbols on this slide, words and images. We can think about the denotative and connotative definitions for all of these. I'm going to start with an easy one here, kittens. Kittens is one where I know that you were expecting me to say like, kittens, oh my God, kittens. I love kittens, and I do love kittens. Let's start with the denotative definition now. A kitten is a cat that's under 1 year old. That's what a kitten is. But when I hear the word kittens, I have a totally different connotative definition. I understand that it's a baby cat, but I also think that a kitten is just the most adorable thing on the planet, and I want to play with the kitten, and I want to hold the kitten, and I want to look at the kitten, and I want to watch cat videos of the kitten. And I have this very cute and loving reaction to the word kitten. Even if you just say the word kitten, I get very excited about it. So my connotative definition is impacting the way that I am thinking about that word. Kittens, pretty universally popular. I mean, maybe you have a cat allergy and you don't like them, but people like kittens. Pretty popular. The rest of the images on this slide are more difficult. And not difficult in a bad way, but they have more complicated connotative definitions. For example, abortion is one that I put on the list. And when I teach this class face-to-face, I put a bunch of words on screen and I start with an easy one. And we go denotative definition. Okay, connotative definition. We get to kittens. Kittens are pretty easy. Apple products, pretty easy. Disabled symbol, pretty easy. Pride flag, okay. Now we're getting into some more connotative definitions. Trump, he's got a few of those going on. And then we get into things like Republicans, feminism, and abortion. And all of these have dictionary definitions. But then you get to the connotative. And it's hard to separate out sometimes that denotative from the connotative. Just like with me and the kittens. I was like, oh my God, kittens, I love them. And I'm going straight to my connotative definition instead of the denotative one. Now, that isn't a bad thing. When we use language, sometimes we want to go straight for that connotative definition. But we have to keep in mind that everybody can have a different connotative definition of these words. So one thing I would encourage you to do is look at some of these words or some of these symbols and think about what your first thought is. Let's say you look at feminism, you're like, yes, I am a feminist. I identify with this word. Okay, now think about what that denotative definition is versus your connotative, yes, I identify with it. Because you might say, yes, identify with feminism. And then okay, so what's a feminist? And then you have a little bit more difficulty with that denotative definition. And feminism is a tough one because there's lots of different definitions for it and waves and all of that kind of stuff. But that's the difference between the denotative and the connotative. Sometimes one is easier than the other. But what we need to remember is that, first of all, the denotative definition does stay pretty much the same from person to person, but the connotative definition changes. And if you have a connotative definition of one thing, and the person you're talking to has a connotative definition of a different thing, then you might have some communication difficulties and some conflict. For the next few slides, I'm going to go through different rules of language and how language is applied in different situations. Phonological rules are rules about how words are said. So if we're going to say words, we all have to agree on kind of how to say them. Not every word has one pronunciation to it. And when I teach this class face-to-face in person, I show this slide and there is a heated discussion about how these words are said. And it amazes me every time. Every time people are like, no, it's this. For the record, in my world, that's a caramel. That's your aunt. That's the Caribbean. Those are crayons. That's Oregon. Nuclear. Syntactic rules are rules about syntax or the order of words. We have to put our words in the correct order for us to make sense. Any of you who are fans of Parks and Rec and are familiar with the character Perd Hapley really likes to put his words out of order. Yoda does this as well. So there's some ways that you can put words out of order and be funny, and that's a character trait. But in general, we need to communicate the order of words correctly. Memes are a wonderful example of syntactic rules of language, because in order for us to understand a meme, it has to be in the correct order. So yes, I'm going to break down a meme. Okay, here's our meme. We have woman yelling at cat. When we take a look at this meme, every time you see this meme, unless somebody is riffing on the meme, you've got these women over here, and generally she is the one that is yelling at this cat. And when she yells at the cat, she says something kind of ridiculous and angry at the cat, and the cat responds with something short and snarky. When we look at the meme, the woman has to be here, the cat has to be here, because she is yelling at the cat. The cat can't be over here, because then she's not yelling at the cat. The transaction doesn't make sense. Her comment has to be here in the meme, because this is the thing that she is saying. If her comment was over on this other side, wouldn't make as much sense. And then, of course, the cat's comment has to be over here, because that's the thing that the cat is saying in response to the woman yelling at the cat. Some of you are like, I am never using this meme ever again because you have ruined it. Good job. But this meme shows just the syntax in this very simple meme right here shows how important the order of words and symbols is to communication. We have to follow these rules in order to understand the meme. The one level up kind of comes 100, and by that I mean comes 200 or 300, 400, or, frankly, graduate school, would be talking about how we can riff on this meme and create a remix of this meme, which follows the same syntactic rules, but kind of breaks them a little bit to create meaning. So you'd have to understand the meme here and then apply that understanding to understand the new meme. And while that sounds really complicated, I'm pretty sure that all of you could handle it. But what you need to know is that memes are an important example of syntax, and without syntax, a meme doesn't work. And that would make us sad. Semantic rules are rules about the meaning of words. So here we have bark and bark. This right here is just a picture of Mo, and he's in there because he's a good boy and he's kind of cute. But when we're talking about the meaning of words, we're talking about the word bark, we need to use the word bark in a way that our audience understands. So if I say bark, a lot of you, knowing me, knowing that I got little Mr. Woofles here, are going to think that I'm talking about a dog saying woof, woof, woof. You're probably not going to think that I'm talking about a tree. So we want to make sure that we're using words correctly, using them with their correct meaning, and being careful of misunderstandings that come up when we use one word that can have two different meanings. And we will talk about that when we talk about equivocal language. So hold that thought. Pragmatic rules of language are how we use language in everyday situations. This is the go up to the checkout counter. How's your day? Good. Those kinds of pragmatic rules for how we do our transaction. How's your day? Good. Did you find everything you were looking for? Look, when they ask me that at Target, I totally lie to them. Because one, I probably didn't find the thing that I was looking for. And two, I definitely found things at the Target that I wasn't looking for. But you get my point. It's kind of a formulaic, pragmatic conversation. And the part comes to how you're going to pay, and there's a pragmatic rule there as well. One of the places where I think we truly see pragmatic rules of language is in any sort of religious service. So this very cute graphic shows Christian churches, but true for really any organized religion. If you go to a service, there are some organized rules of language, depending on what the service is. You get a program. It's got an agenda. And boy, when I go to a church service and they give me a program and they tell me what to do in order, I really appreciate that. So you follow along. There's different pragmatic rules for perhaps taking communion or the sharing of the peace or all of these other things that you do in a church service. And you follow those pragmatic rules in those everyday situations to go through the service as a communal group or to buy things at Target. But those pragmatic rules help us understand how to use language in our everyday situations. So let's talk a bit about the power of language. Book talks a bit about names. I talked about names for about 8 minutes last week, so you can read what the book has to say about names and language and their power. Accents and dialects are another important part of the power of language. And an accent is something that's different from the local speech style, and a dialect is a version of a language. Let's break this down. And you have an accent if you go somewhere where your voice sounds different, even if you're speaking the same language. I live here in Madison, Wisconsin. I have no accent when I am walking around spending money on things that I don't need at the Target that might be pumpkin spice scented. No accent. But a couple years ago, I went to England for a week, and it was fantastic. I took a train from London, where I was staying, to the southern coast of England with plans to hike a little, I say little, it was 8 or 9 miles over cliffs looking over the English Channel. Still one of the best days of my life. But I'm sitting on the train, and I bought a ticket that I thought was the right one. And the ticket taker comes around to check my ticket, and I hand it to him, and he explains to me that, no, this is actually a ticket that's local to London, and the ticket that you need to get where you're going is like $25. But instead of him kicking me off the train for buying the wrong ticket and freeloading, he looked at me and he said, well, I can hear from your accent that you're not from around here. Because I talk like a Midwestern American. Through that accent, he could tell that I wasn't local. He said, okay, here you go. You made a mistake. I'm not going to kick you off the train or write you a ticket or anything like that. Enjoy your day. And I did. A dialect, in contrast, is a version of a language. We all speak English, but there are different dialects of English. For example, in Louisiana, they have a dialect called Creole, which is part of the French that have settled in Louisiana. There's a dialect called Spanglish, where different pieces of Spanish come into English, and it's kind of a hybrid and a mashup. Some of you may have heard of AAVE, which stands for African American Vernacular English, which is a dialect of English primarily spoken in the Black community. You can also look at different dialects of English in the UK or in Australia. They use different words, speak the language differently. We can all understand each other because we're speaking English, but we have different dialects, different versions of the language. Powerful versus powerless language is how we frame the things that we're saying, both the words that we choose and the nonverbals that go with them. Powerful language is things that are clear, assertive, and direct. Powerless language is uncertain, not assertive, deferential. Let's say that you are in a meeting with some people and you're having a transition time or something like that, and you say to the people that you're with, I'm going to use the bathroom and I'll be back in a few minutes. That's powerful language. You're not like taking a power stance like this. I am going to go urinate right now. You don't need to be that direct about it. And please, like, don't tell me what you're doing in there. Just go do it. But announcing, saying, hey, I'm going to use the bathroom. I'm going to be right back. Simple, powerful, we all get it. Powerless language, in contrast, is uncertain and deferential. So powerless language might be something like, yeah, if it's okay with you, do you mind if I just go use the bathroom real quick? Like, if it's okay, I'll be back. Something like that is powerless language. It's uncertain. It's very deferential. And when you're saying something like that, it makes it sound like you're not really sure. For the record, there are two groups of people that need to ask permission to use the bathroom: prisoners and public school children. You are neither. Just go. But sometimes people are offended by that direct, powerful language. And there can be times where it's helpful to soften that message a little bit. It might also depend on the person you're talking to and the culture that they're in, and what their expectations are, and if there's a hierarchy involved. Because for example, and I disagree with this feedback, but I'm going to share it with you. I had a boss that was offended that I did that in front of a customer. We were getting ready to start meeting, and I saw the customer. I'm like, oh, hold on, I'm going to use the bathroom. I'll be right back. And I had to use the bathroom for bathroom reasons. And she gave me feedback that I should have phrased that in a more powerless way. But I still had to use the bathroom. Different people have different preferences. And yes, I'm still salty about that. Finally, we have affiliative language. And affiliative language demonstrates connection within a group. There's convergence and divergence. First, let's start with affiliative. Affiliative language is when you all kind of start to use you all start to use the same language as a group. A sports team is a really great example of this. So if you're a fan of a certain sports team and there's certain things that you call yourselves or language that you use, you're going to use that language to demonstrate connection to your fellow fans. Convergence helps us fit in with the group. You're trying to converge with groups of people. You're going to start to adopt the same language that they are. When we use convergence, we want to show that we identify with other people in that group. For example, I might use convergence even in teaching by talking about memes. I did it. Just gonna cop to talking about memes. I might choose to talk about memes. I might put an emoji in an email or a comment to somebody. I'm choosing language that fits with my audience to connect with them. But then I've got divergence. And that's when you set yourself apart from the group because you want to stand out in some way. Obviously, there are things that I need to do as the instructor of this class to stand out from all of you. Not because I'm special and wonderful and you're not, but because my role as a leader requires me to embrace language that does that. So here I might put in an emoji or make a meme or, tell a stupid joke that connects with the audience. But then divergence, I'm going to talk in maybe a more formal way. I'm going to email more formally and just speak in a way that, in theory, conveys competence and authority. So I'm choosing when I want to converge and when I want to diverge. That's a lot of information, so take a second, let that sink in, rewatch parts that you need to, and I'll be waiting at the next slide. Next, we'll talk about language misunderstandings, and this is where we get to have a little bit of fun. The old book used sign theft as examples for equivocal meanings because people would steal signs that have an equivocal meaning. This sign here for the Richard Bong State Recreation Area, which, to be fair, looks very difficult to steal, was one of the main examples in the old textbook. And when I saw this, I got kind of excited because the Richard Bong State Recreation Area is actually in Wisconsin. It is named after decorated World War I fighter pilot Richard Ira Bong, and he's from Superior, Wisconsin. So, of course, the Bong State Recreation Area is near Kenosha, Wisconsin, about as far apart as you can get in this state. It's a lovely recreation area. I've camped and hiked there a few times. Beautiful, clear lakes, nice open plains and trees, just a lovely area if you want to enjoy a day or two outside. However, some of you might be thinking something a little different when you take a look at this sign. And that would be, of course, the word bong's connection to marijuana culture. You can see why this sign gets stolen on a fairly regular basis. And some of your first reactions might be to laugh, and admittedly, mine was too. It was a combination of recognizing a place that I had been in a textbook and realizing that, yes, this sign probably gets stolen a lot. But let's think about it, because Richard Bong's name is Bong. This is his name. And although he is long deceased, he fought in World War I, we need to be respectful as communicators of his name. And yes, we understand that his name has an equivocal meaning. However, making fun of his name is not appropriate. Treating him differently based on his name is not appropriate. It's not a way for us to be competent communicators. And as we approach things with equivocal meanings, we as communicators really need to see those, think, and then perhaps check those initial reactions to avoid making fun of somebody or hurting their feelings. Next, let's look at relative words. So I've got this great, less interesting stock photo of apples and oranges. Relative words are words with a comparison. And comparisons can be difficult. Let's say that I'm going into the weight room and I get out of the weight room and I say, oh, dude, I squatted a bunch of weight today, but without giving the number. Now, there's a lot of relative things that can happen there. First of all, somebody might look at that weight and be like, oh my God, that's a lot. Somebody else might look at that weight and be like, oh, that's my warm up. That person, to be fair, is probably a dude. People might be able to lift different weights based on their body size. And in powerlifting competitions, for example, competitors are put into weight classes. So if somebody who's 150 pounds squats 150 pounds, that's different than somebody who is 200 pounds squatting the same amount of weight. So there's a comparison. It's relative based on body weight and size and sex. So all of these relative things come together. When we're saying that something is large or small, it's important to understand what we're comparing it to. If you came from a high school that had a small graduating class, and I'm going to say 50 is small, but some of you might be saying, whoa, no, 50, that's not small. If your graduating class is 50 and you're living in a very small rural town and you come to Madison, Madison is going to be large. Edgewood College is going to seem large. But if you're coming from, let's say, Chicago, and you had a graduating class that was 500, Edgewood College is going to seem really small to you. So when you talk about you went to a small town for college and the person from a smaller town, the person from Baraboo is like, oh, I went to the big city for college, you're going to the same place, but you have different perspectives on it based on your baseline. So when you're using these relatives words, think about how things are related to each other and to your own personal experiences as you're making those comparisons. Next, let's talk about slang and jargon. Slang is casual language in a group. So a lot of that is going to be things like this cute little phone case that says, "We lit fam." That's slang of the youth or something like that. I'm over 30. Just be nice. Let me live in my own little happy world. Slang might be something like yeet. Again, I'm over 30. I do not understand how to use this word, but it's casual language within the group. Jargon, however, is specialized vocabulary for a group. And this can be a hobby or it can be a profession or a workplace. Medical profession, tons of jargon. If any of you have ever read a prescription, you're like, I don't understand what this means. That's jargon right there. The example that I have right here is an example of the jargon that is used to make these. These are hand knit socks. Yes, it is prop day in Comms 100. And if you want to get real meta, I knit one of these socks on that train in England that I didn't buy the right ticket for, that was fine because I had an accent. So, boom, meta. Jargon is specialized vocabulary for a group. So if you take a look here, this is small and hard to see. Cast on stitches. The heck does that mean? Knit in the round. WTF, mate. Heel. Any of you knitters are just like, nah. Not interested. And these are all different pieces of technical language that I understand as a person who makes these, but you wouldn't understand because you don't knit. It doesn't mean that jargon is bad. Jargon is really effective when you're communicating with a person who understands that information. If I'm talking to one of my friends who also knits socks about how to knit her sock, I'm going to use that language. And if she doesn't understand what that language means, I'm going to teach her what it means. So if she's like, I don't know what a heel flap is, we're going to have a chat about a heel flap and a short row and how that comes together to make a sock. So that when she looks at a pattern like this, she will understand the language in it. As you're using slang and jargon, make sure that your audience understands what those things mean and that they're appropriate for the people that you're talking to. Sometimes slang and jargon are absolutely appropriate for your audiences. Sometimes they're not. Use your best judgment. A euphemism substitutes a less offensive or awkward word for another. Here we have a classic euphemism, Netflix and chill. We all know what this means. It's a euphemism for coming over and doing some sort of hooking up or other kind of sexual activity. Always get consent, affirmative consent. But you're telling somebody, you're asking somebody, hey, you want to come over and Netflix and chill? It might make that ask a little less awkward, especially if it's somebody you don't know particularly well. But it also adds a little layer of fun to it because you're not asking them directly, you're kind of hinting around it, and that makes the language a little bit more fun. We can use euphemisms to cover up, or not cover up necessarily, but for other awkward social things. There's, for example, passed away is a euphemism for death. Death, cool, like we all know what it means, but it's very final and direct. And if we use passed away or in a better place, we're making that little bit softer and not as mean and harsh for people who have just suffered a loss. Euphemisms definitely have their place, but we need to be careful about understanding what we're trying to communicate. If you're asking a person to Netflix and chill and you're literally thinking, we are going to sit on this couch and we are going to watch Netflix together and that is all we are going to do, and that person is thinking that you're asking for something else, you're going to have a miscommunication there. Euphemisms definitely add fun, intrigue, mystery to language. They can smooth awkward social situations, but you also have to make sure that the person who is listening to that euphemism understands where you're going. Okay, so now we have our weekly dog video. This Mr. Waffles again. Look at him. Look at those good sits. Oh, man. Those are some real good sits. Come here, bud. Come here. Okay. He's so excited. And he dropped the dog biscuit. All right, bud. Come here. Come here. This way. This way. This way. This way. Okay, now, look. Look there. Look up there. There you go. He's so excited. He's going to drop it again. He's going to drop it. Okay, bud. I don't want to get my fingies that close to your biters. Dude, you are terrible at this. Okay, here. One dog treat, one dog. It bounced off of your teeth. You are not that smart, Mr. Waffles. You're just not that smart. But you're a good boy, and you're very, very cute. Thanks for coming to the lecture. That's our show. We'll see you next week.